Lily Harmon grew up in a white farmhouse at the end of a long gravel driveway in Millbrook, New York, surrounded by apple trees and open fields and the particular quiet of a place that has always known what it is. She grew up with her grandfather, Thomas Harmon, who was 61 years old when Lily came to live with him and who had retired early from 30 years as a civil engineer to tend his 12 acres and his apple orchard and, as it turned out, his granddaughter. Thomas was a tall man with large hands and a deliberate way of moving, the kind of man who fixed things rather than replacing them and who believed that most problems in life could be approached the same way, carefully, without panic, and with the right tools. He had not expected to raise a child at 61. But Thomas Harmon had never been the kind of man who walked away from what needed doing. Lily's mother, Rachel, was Thomas's only daughter. Rachel had been bright and restless and full of a particular kind of energy that small towns struggle to contain, the kind that needs more room than it can find. She had left Millbrook at 18 for college in Boston, stayed for law school, fallen in love with a man named Derek who turned out to be the wrong kind of complicated, and by the time Lily was born, the situation had become what lawyers refer to as contested and what everyone else calls a disaster. The details were adult and ugly and had no place in a child's life. What Lily knew, at 4 years old, was this: her mother had gone somewhere far away. She would be back. Mommy loved her. And Grandpa Thomas made the best blueberry pancakes in the entire state of New York, possibly the world. This last point was not disputed by anyone who had eaten them. Thomas raised Lily the way he had built bridges, with attention to foundations. She had a bedtime and a morning routine and Saturday chores that were real chores, not pretend ones. She had a vegetable garden of her own, a 3x6 plot beside the big garden, where she grew tomatoes and zucchini and one very ambitious pumpkin that took over more space than anyone had planned. She had a bookshelf that was always full and a library card that was always in use and a grandfather who read to her every single night until she was old enough to read to him instead, which she began doing at 7 with a seriousness and inflection that made Thomas have to look away sometimes because she sounded so much like Rachel. Rachel called every Sunday. Without fail, for 10 years, Rachel called every Sunday at 6 o'clock in the evening. The calls were the thing Lily organized her weeks around. From the time she was 4 years old, Sunday was the day the week was pointed toward. She would save up things to tell her mother, funny things that happened at school, things she had read, questions she had been carrying around all week waiting for the right person to ask. Rachel asked about her grades and her friends and the garden and Grandpa Thomas. She said "I love you" before she hung up, and Lily said "I love you" back, and then the line would go quiet and Lily would sit for a while holding the phone even after the call had ended, the way you hold a warm cup after the coffee is gone. She never stopped waiting. When Lily was 6, she drew a picture of her family for a first-grade assignment. She drew Thomas on the left, tall with his gray hair. She drew herself in the middle, smaller, with a yellow dress she did not own but had always wanted. And on the right, at the far edge of the paper, she drew a figure she had to stretch the page to include, a woman with brown hair and a red coat, standing a little apart from the others, but still on the same paper. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, knelt beside Lily's desk and asked gently who the woman in the red coat was. "My mom," Lily said. "She lives far away, but she's still my family. She still counts." Mrs. Patterson said of course she counts. Then Mrs. Patterson went to her supply closet during recess and cried for about 3 minutes, which she would never have admitted to anyone. When Lily was 8, a girl in her class named Brianna had a birthday party that every girl was invited to except Lily. The reason given, through the complicated social machinery of 3rd grade, was that Brianna's mom had said she didn't want to invite kids who didn't have a normal family. Thomas found out about this from another parent and sat at the kitchen table for a long time before he went upstairs to talk to Lily. Lily was on her bed reading. She looked up when he came in. "I know about the party," she said, before he could speak. Thomas sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." Lily considered this. "It's okay," she said. "Brianna isn't very interesting anyway. Her favorite book is a movie tie-in." Thomas laughed despite himself. Lily went back to her book. But that night, after Thomas had said good night and turned off the light and gone back downstairs, she called her mother. It was Wednesday, not Sunday. She had never called on a day that wasn't Sunday before. Rachel picked up on the second ring. Lily? Baby, what's wrong? Nothing, Lily said. I just wanted to hear your voice. A silence. Then Rachel's voice, careful and full. I'm right here. Mom, do you think about me? Like, during the week? Not just on Sundays. Lily. Rachel's voice broke slightly at the edges. I think about you every single hour of every single day. You are the first thing I think about in the morning and the last thing I think about at night. You are the reason I do every single thing I do. Lily was quiet for a moment. Okay, she said. Good. I just needed to check. I'm coming back, Rachel said. I promise you. I am coming back. I know, Lily said. Good night, Mom. Good night, baby. I love you so much. I love you too. When Lily was 11, a boy named Tyler in her class told her in front of a group of other kids that her mom had abandoned her because she didn't want her. Lily looked at him for a long moment with the steady, evaluating gaze she had inherited directly from Thomas Harmon. Then she said, in a perfectly level voice, "You don't know anything about my mother. And I feel genuinely sorry for you that the most interesting thing you can think of to do with your time is try to hurt people." Then she walked away. She did not cry until she got home. She sat at the kitchen table and cried in the way she had learned to cry, quietly, efficiently, getting it done. Thomas put a glass of apple juice in front of her and sat across from her and waited. He said she didn't want me, Lily said. He's wrong, Thomas said. I know he's wrong, Lily said. I know that. But it still goes in, Grandpa. Even when you know something isn't true, it still goes in. Thomas looked at his granddaughter, this 11-year-old girl who was already doing the emotional work of someone twice her age, and he felt the particular helplessness of loving someone and being unable to take their pain away. Yeah, he said quietly. I know it does. He reached across the table and put his large weathered hand over hers. They sat like that for a while. The kitchen clock ticked. The apple trees moved in the wind outside the window. Lily drank her juice. She did her homework. She set the table for dinner. She kept going, the way she always kept going. Because that was what Lily Harmon did. She waited and she hurt and she kept going, and she never once stopped believing that her mother was coming back. The winter Lily turned 13 was the hardest. Rachel missed 2 Sunday calls in a row. The first one, Thomas covered. He said Mom had been caught up with something important and would call tomorrow. She called the next day, briefly, sounding distracted and strained, and said she was sorry and that things were complicated right now. The second missed Sunday, there was no call at all. Lily sat in the living room from 5:30 until 7:15 with her phone face up on the cushion beside her. Thomas came in at 6:30 with hot cocoa and set it on the end table and didn't say anything. At 7:15, Lily picked up her phone and went upstairs. Thomas heard her door close. Not slam. Close. Which was somehow worse. He called Rachel himself that night. She picked up on the 5th ring. She sounded wrong, exhausted in a deep way, the way people sound when they have stopped sleeping properly. Rachel. What's happening? The case got complicated again, Dad. Derek's lawyers filed something new. I can't explain all of it. I'm trying to hold everything together. Your daughter sat by the phone for 2 hours tonight. A long silence. I know, Rachel said. Her voice was hollow. I know, Dad. She's 13. She's doing everything right. She's getting good grades and she's kind to people and she tends her garden and she reads every book she can get her hands on and she waits for you every Sunday like it's a religious practice. And tonight she waited and you didn't call. I know. She didn't cry. She just closed her door. That's worse, Rachel. The silence on the line stretched long and painful. I'm trying to come home, Rachel said finally. I am trying with everything I have. This case when it's done, when it's finally done, I'm coming home. I promise you. Make sure that promise is worth something, Thomas said. Because she has been keeping yours for 9 years. He hung up. Downstairs in the kitchen, alone, he pressed both hands flat on the counter and breathed. Then he made himself a cup of tea he didn't drink and stood at the window looking out at the dark orchard until his heartbeat slowed. Upstairs, Lily sat on her bed with her knees pulled to her chest, not reading, not sleeping, just sitting in the dark looking at the photograph she kept on her nightstand, her mother holding her at maybe 2 years old, both of them laughing at something outside the frame, Rachel's arms wrapped completely around her. Lily touched the frame with one finger. I know you're trying, she whispered. I know. Then she turned off the light. And she waited for morning, because that was what she did. She waited and she kept going. And somewhere, 10 years deep into the longest kind of hope, she still believed. Spring of the year Lily turned 14, something changed. Rachel's calls became more frequent. Tuesday evenings, sometimes Thursday mornings before school. Her voice changed to less strained, more present, like someone surfacing after a long time underwater. She asked more detailed questions. She remembered things Lily had mentioned in passing 2 weeks earlier. She laughed more easily. One Tuesday in April, Rachel said, Lily, I need to tell you something. Lily was at the kitchen table doing homework. She set her pencil down. The case is almost over, Rachel said. My lawyers think by fall. October at the latest. Lily was very still. What does that mean? She asked carefully. She had learned, over 14 years, not to let hope run ahead of her. It means I can come home, Rachel said. It means I can finally come home. Lily said nothing for a long moment. Thomas looked up from the sink where he was washing dishes. Lily? Rachel's voice. You still there? I'm here, Lily said. Her voice was steady. Controlled. Tell me when you know for sure. I will. I promise. Okay, Lily said. I have to finish my homework. Okay, baby. I love you. I love you too, Mom. She hung up. She picked up her pencil. She looked at the math problem in front of her. Thomas dried his hands and came to the table and sat down. You heard? Lily said, without looking up. I heard. She kept looking at the math problem. I don't want to get excited yet, she said. Is that okay? Can I just not get excited yet? That's exactly okay, Thomas said. She nodded. She wrote down a number. Erased it. Wrote it again. October, she said quietly. Like she was filing it away somewhere careful. Somewhere protected. October, Thomas agreed. The case concluded on the 14th of September. Rachel called on a Thursday at 8 in the morning, when Lily was eating cereal before school, and said 2 words. It's done. Lily set down her spoon. Done, she repeated. Done, Rachel said. I'm booking a flight. I'll be in New York by the end of October. I need a few weeks to close things out here, pack up my apartment, give notice at my firm. October, Lily said. October. The 26th. I land at JFK at 4 in the afternoon. Lily wrote the date on the inside cover of her notebook, which was where she kept the things that mattered. October 26th. She drew a small rectangle around it. Then she went to school. At school that day, her English teacher Mr. Galloway assigned a personal essay. The prompt was, write about something you have been waiting for. Lily looked at the prompt for approximately 4 seconds. Then she picked up her pen and wrote without stopping for the entire 45 minutes. She wrote about Sunday phone calls and dinosaur pajamas and a woman in a red coat at the far edge of a piece of paper who still counted. She wrote about blueberry pancakes and apple trees and a grandfather with large hands who showed up every single day. She wrote about the particular quality of 10-year-old hope, How it is different from regular hope, heavier and more serious and strangely more durable, the way old wood is stronger than new wood. She wrote, "I have been waiting for my mother for 10 years. I have learned, in that time, that waiting is not the same as giving up. Waiting, when it is done right, is a form of faith. It means you still believe that what you are waiting for is real and true and worth the time it takes to arrive. I believe my mother is real and true and worth every Sunday, every year, every careful ordinary day." Mr. Galloway read the essay twice. Then he wrote at the bottom, in red pen, "This is the finest thing I have read from a student in 22 years of teaching." G. Thomas spent 3 weeks getting the house ready. He repainted Rachel's old bedroom. He drove to the nursery in town and bought a flat of Mum's yellow and rust and deep orange and planted them along the front walk so they would be blooming when she arrived. He polished the floors. He fixed the porch step that had been loose for 2 years. Lily made a sign. She made it on a Saturday morning at the kitchen table with a large piece of poster board and paint, real paint, the kind from the art store, not the craft store. She worked on it for 3 hours, carefully, with the seriousness she brought to everything that mattered. She didn't tell Thomas what it said until it was done. She held it up for him to see. It said, in large blue and green letters, "Welcome home, MOM." We kept the light on. Thomas looked at the sign for a long moment. "You're going to make an old man cry," he said. "You're not that old," Lily said. She was smiling. It was the smile that had been waiting its whole life to be this wide. October 26th was a Tuesday. Lily woke up at 5:30 in the morning and could not go back to sleep. She lay in bed looking at the ceiling while the room went slowly from dark to grey to the pale gold of early morning. She listened to the apple trees in the yard, the particular sound they made in the October wind. She looked at the photograph on her nightstand. She got up. She made herself eat breakfast because Thomas said she should. She went to school because Thomas said she should do that too, that it was important to keep doing ordinary things even on extraordinary days, and she understood what he meant even if every ordinary minute that day felt stretched and enormous and full of waiting. Her last class ended at 3:15. Thomas was in the parking lot in the truck. He was wearing his good flannel shirt, which was the closest thing Thomas Harmon had to a formal outfit. Lily climbed in and set the sign carefully on the back seat and they drove to JFK without speaking much, which was fine. Thomas and Lily had always been comfortable in silence together. It was one of the things they shared. The traffic on the Taconic was bad. It was always bad. Thomas drove steadily, both hands on the wheel, and Lily watched the Hudson Valley roll past the window, the hills going rust and gold, the river glinting through the trees, and thought about the first thing she was going to say. She had thought about it many times. She had rehearsed it in different ways. She had imagined the moment so many times over 10 years that it had worn a groove in her, the way water wears a groove in stone, and now that the moment was almost actually here, she found that every version she had rehearsed seemed wrong. Too much. Too small. She decided she would just see what came out. They parked at the terminal. Thomas carried the sign. Lily walked beside him into the arrivals hall, which smelled like airports always smell: coffee and motion and the particular anxious energy of people either leaving or being found. They found the right exit. The board showed Rachel's flight had landed. They waited. People came through the doors in ones and twos and small clusters. Families reuniting, the ordinary extraordinary business of people returning to each other. Lily watched each face as the doors opened and closed. Thomas stood slightly behind her and to the left. He held the sign at his side, not raised yet. Lily's hands were completely still. The doors opened. Rachel Harmon came through with a rolling suitcase and a carry-on bag over one shoulder and hair shorter than it had been in the photographs, and 10 years written quietly in her face in the way that 10 years always writes itself. She was scanning the waiting area. Her eyes moved across the crowd. They found Lily. Rachel stopped walking. People moved around her on both sides, and she stood completely still in the middle of the arrivals hall and looked at her daughter, who was 14 years old and tall and had her grandmother's cheekbones and her own mother's eyes, and was looking back at her with an expression that Rachel would never in the rest of her life be able to describe properly. Thomas raised the sign. "Welcome home, Mom." We kept the light on. Rachel's face broke. Not dramatically. Not in the way of movies, where grief announces itself. It broke the way ice breaks in spring, quietly, from the inside, all at once. Her hand came up to cover her mouth and her eyes filled, and the rolling suitcase handle dropped from her other hand, and she walked forward, then faster, then she was running, and Lily was running too, and they met in the middle of that arrivals hall with the full force of 10 years of Sunday phone calls and dinosaur pajamas and 114 ornaments and a woman in a red coat at the far edge of a piece of paper who always counted. Rachel wrapped both arms around her daughter. Lily pressed her face into her mother's shoulder. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. Around them, in the arrivals hall, strangers stopped. A man in a business suit set down his briefcase. A young woman with headphones lowered them to her neck. A family of four paused their luggage cart and watched in silence. An older woman standing near Thomas looked at the sign he was still holding and then at the two figures in the middle of the floor, and then she put one hand over her heart and said, quietly, to no one in particular, "Oh my goodness." Thomas stood with the sign at his side and his eyes full and his face doing the complicated thing it did when he was keeping himself very carefully together. He watched his daughter and his granddaughter hold each other in the arrivals hall of JFK Airport, and he thought about the farmhouse kitchen at 4 in the morning 10 years ago when a 4-year-old girl in dinosaur pajamas asked him if that was Mommy on the phone. He had told her the truth then. The only useful part of it. She loves you very much. He had been right about that. He had been completely right about that. They drove home in the dark. Rachel sat in the back seat of the truck with Lily, and Lily leaned against her mother's shoulder the way she had leaned against Thomas's shoulder in that kitchen 10 years ago, her whole weight, completely, the way you can only lean on someone you completely trust. Rachel looked out the window at the dark hills and the lit farmhouses scattered along the valley and the first stars appearing above the tree line. She held her daughter with both arms. She breathed. "It smells like home," she said. "The air. It smells exactly like I remembered." "October," Lily said. "It smells different in October." "Good different." "Yeah," Lily said. "Good different." Thomas drove. The truck's headlights moved across the familiar road. The gravel driveway appeared. The farmhouse at the end of it, every light on, the mums along the front walk still blooming in the beam of the porch light. Rachel saw it and went quiet. Thomas stopped the truck. Nobody moved for a moment. Then Lily opened the door and climbed out and held out her hand to her mother. Rachel took it. They walked up the front path together, past the mums. Thomas unlocked the door. They went inside. The house smelled like blueberry pancakes. Thomas had made a batch before they left and left them warming in the oven. Rachel stood in the hallway of the house where she had grown up and looked at the kitchen and the living room and the staircase and the bookshelf that was still too full, always too full, and she pressed both hands over her face and breathed through them. Lily stood beside her. She put her hand on her mother's arm. "It's okay," Lily said. "You're home now. You can stop." Rachel lowered her hands. She looked at her daughter, this 14-year-old girl who had waited 10 years with the patience and the dignity and the steady unbroken faith of someone much older and much more tested. "When did you get so wise?" Rachel asked. Lily almost smiled. "I had a good teacher," she said. She glanced toward Thomas, who was in the kitchen pretending to check on the pancakes. Rachel laughed. It was the first full laugh, unguarded and real, and it filled the hallway of the farmhouse on Elm Creek Road the way it used to, the way Rachel's laugh always had, completely, without reservation, leaving no space unfilled. Thomas appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Pancakes are ready," he said. They sat at the kitchen table, all three of them, and ate blueberry pancakes at 9:30 at night on a Tuesday in October, and outside the window the apple trees moved in the dark and the stars were very clear and the farmhouse was full of light. Lily Harmon graduated from high school 4 years later at the top of her class. She gave a short speech at graduation that she had not told anyone she was giving. She stood at the podium and looked out at the rows of families and said, "Someone I love very much once told me that waiting is not the same as giving up. I want to say that I believe that is true. And I want to say that if there is someone waiting for you, waiting the way only the people who truly love us can wait, patiently and faithfully and without giving up, please don't make them wait any longer than you have to. Go home. The light is on." She looked at the third row. Rachel was there. Thomas was there. And both of them were completely undone, in the dignified, quiet way of people who have been waiting a long time for a moment they always believed was coming. Lily smiled at them. Then she walked off the stage and back to her seat, and she was smiling the whole way, the smile that had been waiting its whole life to be that wide and that sure and that completely, perfectly at peace. Some children wait for things they should never have to wait for. They wait in farmhouse kitchens in dinosaur pajamas. They wait by phones on Sunday evenings. They draw their mother at the far edge of the paper and write her name, and they carry her in that careful, protected place where the things we cannot afford to stop believing are kept. And some of them wait long enough. Lily Harmon waited 10 years for her mother. She did not stop believing. She did not stop calling. She did not stop drawing that figure at the far edge of the page, in the red coat, still counting, still family, still there. She waited. And her mother came home. Because some love is worth every Sunday. Every year. Every ordinary day of keeping the light on. If this story reached something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear that some things are worth waiting for. Subscribe to Tale Vera for more stories about love, resilience, and the people who never stop showing up for each other. And leave a comment below. Tell us about someone who waited for you, or someone you've been waiting for. Your story matters. We want to hear it.